Recording. All right, so it looks like we are now recording. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Buser. I'm a planner with the City of Brantford's Planning Department, or Planning and Development Services. This is a public information center for the City of Brantford's Heritage Register project. This is Phase E. That is for a portion of North Ward and the Terrace Hill neighborhoods. The city has retained Archaeological Services Incorporated to assist us with this project, and I'm joined tonight by some of their staff. So this public information center is being recorded and will be posted to the City of Brantford's Neighborhood Planning YouTube page, where it'll be available for anyone to watch. And then you can always come back and see the information we have here and listen to the questions and answers that were provided. So with that, I will turn it over to ASI. I'll turn it over to Annie, who will be leading our presentation.
I'm going to actually just jump in. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to kick us off tonight. First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight for this next phase of the Brantford Heritage Register project. And just to go over some of the details that Patrick shared already. Really, we're here tonight to share with you factual information, also to answer any questions you may have about the process that has occurred, as well as the results. We're also here to facilitate a discussion and listen to views and opinions, and also identify next steps of where we go from here. Next, please. So my name is Rebecca Shera. I'm a partner with ASI, the consultant team hired by the City of Brantford to undertake this project. I direct our firm's Cultural Heritage Division and have been involved with the project since we began working with the city. I will be moderating tonight's question and answer period. With me tonight is Annie Vega, a senior cultural heritage specialist with ASI and who has also been involved with the project since its beginnings. She will guide us through an overview of the work completed to date and is available to answer questions. Also with us is Meredith Stewart from ASI, a project manager on our team. She will be taking notes this evening and also available to clarify any aspects of the work completed as appropriate. Next. So tonight we have two key objectives. First, Annie will provide a presentation. She will explain what a heritage register is and what it means and doesn't mean for a property to be included on one. She will then explain the approach and methodology used to update Brantford's heritage register. After the presentation, there's a question and answer period. At that time, attendees, as Patrick noted, are invited to ask questions in the chat or by raising your hand literally or with the raise hand button. We kindly ask that you wait until this dedicated time to ask your questions. Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. With that, I will turn it over to Annie to start us off with some background on the Heritage Register project.
Thank you, Rebecca. So to begin, we would like to provide information on municipal heritage registers. We will look at the benefits to the community of a heritage register and the implications of inclusion on a heritage register for a property owner. Next slide. A heritage register is a statutory requirement under the Ontario Heritage Act. The heritage register is kept by the clerk of the municipality and must include properties that have been designated for their individual cultural heritage value or interest under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, or groups of properties that have collective cultural heritage value or interest under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Properties protected in this way are called designated properties. A heritage register may also include properties that have not been designated under Part 4 or 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, but are believed to be of cultural heritage value or interest. These properties are often referred to as listed properties. Today's meeting is to discuss your property becoming a non-designated property on the City of Brantford's Heritage Register. To add or remove non-designated properties from the Heritage Register, council approval and consultation with the Municipal Heritage Committee is required. Next. There are many benefits to a community of including non-designated properties on a heritage register. A heritage register supports the City of Brantford's policies for cultural heritage conservation. It identifies the cultural heritage resources that are valued by a community and identifies and recognizes the different types of heritage across Brantford's various neighborhoods. Next. Including non-designated properties on the Heritage Register provides the city with a way to identify in a transparent way and to monitor properties of potential heritage value. These properties may require special attention in the development review process. Inclusion on the Heritage Register also ensures interim protection from demolition. Next. The Heritage Register provides accessible, comprehensive information about heritage properties that can be used by many people, including developers, planners, community groups, tourism associations, educators, municipal staff, and private citizens. Next. Depending on how a property is included on the Heritage Register, there are different implications. First, for designated properties, so those recognized as having cultural heritage value or interest through Part 4 or Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, a municipal bylaw is registered on the title of the designated property. When a demolition permit is submitted, the city has up to 90 days to review and make a decision to approve with conditions, or refuse the permit. And for alterations or renovations that may affect the designated property's heritage attributes, a heritage permit is required. For non-designated or listed properties, which is the focus of the protection we are discussing tonight, there are no legal documents registered on the title of the property. When a demolition permit is submitted, the city has up to 60 days to review and consider options for conservation. If a decision is not made within 60 days, then the demolition permit is processed normally. And for alterations or renovations, a heritage permit is not required. Next. All right, so now that we have looked at how a municipal heritage register works, we would like to take you through the history of the City of Brantford's Heritage Register project. In the 1990s, the City of Brantford started identifying properties with potential cultural heritage value. These properties were documented through an informal inventory, and over the following 25 years, thousands of properties were added to this inventory. Throughout the years, various methods were used to identify, document, and evaluate properties that were added to the inventory. This was a common practice in Ontario as a way to proactively understand properties that were potentially valued in the community. In 2005, the Ontario Heritage Act was amended to enable properties to be included on a municipal heritage register as non-designated. This amendment also enabled the review of demolition permits. The City of Brantford identified a need to review their informal inventory to confirm which properties should be recommended to move on to the Heritage Register through a council-approved process. ASI was retained in late 2017 to review and evaluate the informal inventory, which has over 9,000 properties. Next. The key objectives of the project were to conduct the background research, to review the existing heritage inventory using a consistent methodology, to evaluate properties using criteria that reflect Brantford's unique heritage and which are based on Ontario Regulation 906 of the Ontario Heritage Act, to provide recommendations for properties to be included on the Heritage Register, to provide a user-friendly, accessible database to house the Heritage Register, and to consult with the public. Next slide, please. Part 1 of the project was completed in 2 phases between 2018 and 2020. That part of the project included a review of the existing heritage inventory, consultation with the public, as well as the Municipal Heritage Committee, historical research, the development of a thematic framework, identification of character areas, screening, field survey, and evaluation. That work recommended 832 properties for inclusion on the Heritage Register as non-designated or listed properties. In August 2020, Council approved the listing of 98 priority properties which have been included on the Heritage Register. We began Part 2 of the project in the summer of 2021. Tonight's meeting is part of the 5th of 8 phases that will be carried out through this year and conclude in 2023. Each phase consists of consultation with property owners prior to properties being presented to the Municipal Heritage Committee and Council for a decision. Next. So the next part of the presentation is take you through the work that was conducted that resulted in the recommendation at the end of Part 1 of the project. Tools were developed to efficiently evaluate 9,000 plus properties to determine which properties should be included as non-designated listed properties on the Heritage Register. The approach was systematic and rigorous. Next. To gain an understanding of the individual properties and their context, work was carried out at 3 different scales. At the citywide scale, a thematic framework was developed to understand the key significant themes across the city, when they happened, and why they happened where they did. The city was then divided up into neighborhoods based on local understanding of neighborhood divisions and the development pattern of how areas of the city became part of the city. At this neighborhood scale, it was identified where the themes occurred and what they looked like for different neighborhoods. For example, residential development may look quite different in one part of the city than another because of when that development took place. With these pieces in place, the individual properties were then reviewed to standardize the inventory data for the purpose of comparison and evaluation. The understanding of the city's and city areas' important themes could then be applied to each property. Next. During part one of the project, there were several points of contact with the community and stakeholders. The project team met with members of the 6 Nations of the Grand River Consultation and Accommodation Policy Team and staff of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation Department of Consultation and Accommodation. There were 2 public information centers held, which were advertised for anyone in the city to attend. At the first Public Information Center, community members were asked questions about the history of the city, and they identified properties that may be of cultural heritage value through a mapping exercise. The second Public Information Center presented similar information to tonight's presentation on the project, including the methodology and the recommendations. Requests for input from relevant public agencies, heritage organizations, and cultural groups were made. Information was shared about the project on the city's website, and meetings were held with the Brantford Heritage Committee, and a city area workshop was held with the Heritage Committee's Education Subcommittee. Additional properties that were not on the existing heritage inventory were identified as part of the engagement process and integrated into the project. Next. Part one of the project also involved the identification of significant historical themes and development of an understanding of how and where these themes have expressed themselves over time. The development of a citywide thematic history framework provided the basic contextual structure for the systematic and consistent inventory and evaluation of properties in terms of their relationships to significant events, trends, and periods in Brantford's history of built form types. Within the thematic framework, important periods, events, and patterns of development were identified and organized into thematic categories, including agricultural, industrial, residential, civic and institutional, and commercial. The thematic framework was also structured around a chronology of the city's development, focusing on the significant periods that defined and shaped the city as a whole, from its earliest indigenous land uses to the 21st century. Key events and trends for each thematic category were identified. Next. The primary objective of part one of the project was the identification of how and where the city of Brantford's significant development themes physically materialized. This was achieved by linking time periods, key development themes, and associated land uses and built forms with specific areas in the city. This framework provides a system to reliably and consistently understand any building's potential cultural heritage value without requiring extensive knowledge about an individual building. By using location, architectural styles, basic built form information, and prospective building ages, large numbers of properties were then organized and prioritized into categories of known and potential cultural heritage value. Through research and analysis, the city of Brantford was divided into 26 areas and assigned a corresponding name. These units are referred to as city areas. For the purposes of part two of the project, city areas have been grouped into priority areas, both of which are shown on the map. Next slide. The goal of screening properties was to ensure that only those properties that had potential to be eligible for listing on the Heritage Register and/or were of community interest were documented during field survey and reviewed for evaluation. Screening criteria were developed to capture properties that would best exemplify and communicate the history of Brantford. The criteria that were developed were designed to reflect community interest, communicate Brantford's history, and represent the breadth of building stock within the city. If a property met at least one of the screening criteria, it moved on to field survey. If a property did not meet any criterion, it did not move on for further assessment. Next. Field survey was conducted between May and August 2019 for all properties that met at least one of the screening criteria. Nearly 4,000 properties in total were surveyed. The goal of the field survey was to photograph the current existing conditions of each property and to update existing property information. The photographs taken during field survey were then used to assess the material integrity of each property. Next. Integrity, as defined in the Ontario Heritage Toolkit on Evaluation, is the authenticity of a historical resource's physical identity evidenced by the remaining characteristics that existed during the resource's period of significance. A scale of low, sufficient, and exceptional was used. Generally, a property that has low integrity retains few or no character-defining features and/or has been substantially altered. Generally, a property that has sufficient integrity will retain a majority of its character-defining features and will retain enough aspects of integrity to convey its significance. Replacement materials may be present so long as they do not affect the overall integrity of design. Similarly, if an addition is present, to be considered sufficient, it must be subordinate to the overall character of the building. Increased age and rarity of the property type may also lower the threshold required for sufficient integrity. Generally, a property that has exceptional integrity will retain all of its character-defining features and will rate highly in all aspects of integrity. A property with exceptional integrity will have undergone few or no alterations since its original construction and will not have been moved from its original location. Additions are either not present or minimally visible from the right-of-way. It should be noted that a property that has lower integrity rating due to alteration or degradation of original materials can still retain heritage interest or value. Material integrity is one of many factors considered in evaluating a property's heritage value. Next. Any property that was determined to have sufficient or exceptional integrity then moved forward to evaluation. It should be noted that all properties that made it through the screening process, including those with low integrity, have the potential to retain cultural heritage value or interest. Focusing the evaluation process on properties of sufficient and exceptional integrity, however, provides the opportunity for prioritization of the strongest candidates for listing. The evaluation process was used to establish which criteria properties met, with each property having the potential to meet one or more of the evaluation criteria. Properties in the evaluation phase were measured against each of the evaluation criteria based on available historical information on the existing heritage inventory and physical and contextual data collected during the field survey. Design or physical criteria looked at whether a property has an early date of construction for the city or for a city area, whether it is a rare or vanishing type, and whether it is a rare, representative, or unique style or design. Historical or associative value considered whether the property was associated with a significant organization, architect, or notable person or event. Contextual value considered whether the property was located at an intersection and designed for its corner lot, whether it was a commercial property within a primarily residential neighborhood, and whether it was associated with a specific type of development within an area. Next. Using the evaluation criteria and material integrity in combination allows the opportunity to identify which properties are the strongest candidates for inclusion on the Heritage Register. Strong candidates are those properties that meet multiple evaluation criteria and are of exceptional or sufficient material integrity. Equally strong candidates are those properties that retain exceptional or sufficient material integrity and are at a greater risk of loss. Properties which have a greater risk of loss are those that naturally have fewer properties as they reflect unique, rare, or vanishing styles or types, or are part of a collection of properties which have value as a group. Next. For part 2 of the project, the Phase E properties are shown in dark gray on the map. The properties were identified as strong candidates for inclusion on the Heritage Register as non-designated listed properties. Next. To review, inclusion on the Heritage Register as a non-designated listed property means there are no legal documents registered on the title of the property. Should you apply for a demolition permit, the city has up to 60 days to review and consider options for conservation. However, if this decision is not made within 60 days, then the demolition permit is processed normally. When you're making alterations or renovations to your property, a heritage permit is not required. Next. So following this presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions this evening, and there is an ongoing opportunity to speak to Patrick, who we met at the beginning of the presentation. His contact information is shown on the screen. Following tonight's meeting, there will be several meetings at which this phase of the project will be discussed. On June 27th, the city will be presenting to the Brantford Heritage Committee. Then on September 6th, the report will be provided to the Committee of the Whole for consideration. Following that, Council will make a decision at their September 20th meeting. Should you wish to do so, written comments received by August 29th will be provided to Council for their consideration as part of the staff report. Written comments received by June 21st will be included in staff's report to the Brantford Heritage Committee. I hope this presentation has provided you with the information you need to understand why your property is recommended for inclusion on the Heritage Register. I will now turn it over to Rebecca, who will moderate our Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Annie. So we've concluded the first portion of our session tonight, the presentation from the consultant team, and now the time is for attendees to ask any questions of the consultant team or city staff that are present. So I'd like to invite any of the attendees that are here to raise their hand or put a question in the chat. And I'm just monitoring various places. I'm seeing, I think Chris has his hand up.
Thank you. I have to present this information to our parish council because our parish owns the building that's in question. They're going to ask, are we mandatory, or is it mandatory that we participate in this, or can we opt out, or not that we're going to? I'm going to recommend that we continue with it, but someone's going to ask the question.
That's a great question, and I'll maybe put that to Patrick. In terms of the process of how property owners can move forward with this process.
Yeah, and we'll put it back up on the screen before the end of our Public Information Center tonight. But ultimately, Council is doing this project to sort of narrow down the information we had on our heritage inventory to reflect the best examples in Brantford of properties that have their historic value to the community and their integrity. Any property owner can participate in the process and write or appear at a committee meeting or a council and delegate and request their property not to be included. Any comments we receive in writing by those dates, we put those in the letters you've received, and we have the dates on our slide. So anything received in writing by August 29th, that will be included for council to make its decision. And at that point, council can make the determination if they would like to recognize the property on the Heritage Register and list it, or if they will choose not to list the property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Any other questions from attendees?
I have a question.
Hi, John.
Hi. Yes, I represent the Polish Alliance Hall, and one question is that if we, with business the way it is, we might have to sell, like, say, the one on William Street, which is 119 William. Will that affect us if we have to sell that? Like, for the next buyer, would he be would he, if we were designated, would he be forced into to go with the flow?
That's another great question, John. Annie, did you want to take that question, or I see Patrick has unmuted himself. I'll maybe leave it to you guys to
duke it out. I can take a first pass, and then Annie can add anything. So through this process, it really is council initiated. So if the property is listed, then that would stay the case, even if it changes hands. If the property is listed or is sold and then listed, you could inform the new owner. They could hear about the project, but through our phase of the project, that would continue. The new owner can participate, and once a property is listed, owners have the ability to request a property to be delisted, and so that yourselves or a new owner could make that request of the city.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another one. Let's see. So again, if we would do any repairs or anything like that, would we be forced to follow a certain criteria?
So I'll just continue. So if you have to make repairs to your property, you are subject to the Ontario Building Code. That would continue to apply, but you wouldn't require anything like a heritage permit. This process does not impose a heritage permit requirement for any changes. You're free to renovate or to alter the property.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now another question about 126 Albion Street. I'm just curious how that fell into, for the, for it to be designated as, as the, for the heritage property. Because that part, the front was built, well, in 1965. And that's basically the whole front of the building.
Yep. Thanks, John. I think this is a question for ASI as we are the holders of a lot of the specific property information. And I just want to ask Annie and Meredith, do you have that information at your fingertips right now? Or there's some other hands up? We can go to those hands and come back to this if you need to pull some of the data.
I do have the property information sheet in front of me. So this information sheet would have been circulated with the notice of this meeting tonight. And based on our methodology and criteria and how we approached the evaluation of all these properties, which was a very standardized and way to evaluate such a large number of properties. The criteria that this property met included that it represented a rare vanishing development theme in the city, so the theme of civic or institutional properties. And it's also a representative example of its architectural style, and the architectural style provided is modernism. So those are the two criteria that this property met. And at the same time, it would have had to meet integrity criteria of either sufficient or exceptional. I have a sense, I don't have that specific information in front of me right now, but based on our methodology, that's how this property was recommended for consideration for listing on the Heritage Register.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Annie. So there's a couple other questions, and maybe John, we can come back to you after we get to Brent and Guy. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, my name is Gayatri Godinho.
Okay, good evening. So just before we get to you, just Brent had his hand up first, so we'll start with Brent, and then we'll move to you, and then if there's some other questions, and then John, if you have some more, we can loop back around. So Brent, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. So I'm just wondering then, I recognize you mentioned that there won't be any application for heritage permits and all that sort of stuff, but will there be an expectation beyond standard, if I can use that term, for quality of upkeep should the property be designated or recognized as a heritage property of Brantford?
Another fantastic question. And Patrick, I'll maybe put that to you to speak from the property standards bylaw perspective from the city.
So by virtue of being listed, no, there's no different expected standard of maintenance. Okay.
And then you guys have, I don't remember the three standards of quality there, but should there be a renovation or what have you down the road, is it possible then for the property to shift out of one quality standard down or up based on the work that's being done?
That's another great question, and I think that speaks to the frequency of revisiting this. So Patrick, I don't know if there's an answer the city has to that right now, because I think it's a question of 10 years time looking at these properties. Has anything so drastically changed that it wouldn't merit being on the list anymore?
Yeah, and I think Annie and Meredith could also maybe chip in and explain, I guess, some other properties that were evaluated through this. But yes, certainly as we go through the Heritage Register, there's that potential for review. If someone gets their building permit and constructs an addition and otherwise keeps the building up, that rear addition, let's say, may not have an effect on the building's integrity. But if we do see that a lot of heritage attributes of the property, let's say original brackets, ornate windows and window surrounds or an original front door porch are removed and a lot of that becomes missing, then in the future, yes, that could be reviewed and a grounds to have the property removed from the register.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So we'll move to Gayatri and then Chris and then Vicky.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gayatri, and our property is at William Street, 59 William Street. And so we are new owners of this property. So when we received this in the mail, it was quite a surprise that it's going to be registered. So I want to understand what are the advantages of listing our property as a heritage property, and what are the disadvantages?
Sure, that's a good fundamental question. And Patrick, you fielded this at a previous session. Did you want to start, or Annie can review some of the benefits that she already discussed?
Yeah, well, again, I think maybe a question we can all sort of have an answer to. So the biggest benefit for listing is, you know, it's a great way to recognize the cultural heritage value that the property possesses. In some cases, it's architectural, an ornate building. In some cases, the property is associated with an important individual in the history of the community. So listing is one way to do that. It's sort of like that first look at, you know, what are the properties that have that clear demonstration of their value to the greater community. Disadvantages are hard to really say there's any disadvantages. It's the only effective listing is that if someone is looking to actually demolish the building, that they have to provide the city with 60 days notice. That's for some people not a disadvantage. For others, perhaps if they are looking to completely tear down and rebuild, they could view it that way. But a listing is a fairly high level and simple way of recognizing a property's cultural heritage value.
Thank you, Patrick. Annie, was there anything further you wanted to add to that before we move to Chris and then Vicky?
Sure, I can add a few points in that our heritage register, perhaps one single listed property, you know, there's benefits, but it's as a whole. So with the heritage register, with it recognizes and supports, you know, the city of Brantford's history, identifies those resources that are valued by the community. It also identifies how different types of resources are important in different areas of the city. It also provides the city with a way that is for the city to identify in a very transparent way and for them to be able to monitor properties of potential cultural heritage value when it comes time for development review or demolition permits. So there's an understanding from the city, from property owners, from developers, from anyone with an interest that should a demolition permit be requested, that they assess in a transparent way that there's going to be an extra lens there, so that nobody's caught unaware or as a surprise later on. And should that be something that the property owner wants to do. And it's a great resource for as a whole, as a register for people to do research on heritage and the history of Brantford if wanted. Great for tourism associations to pick on to help promote tourism in Brantford. Yeah, so just a few things that I thought I could add.
Thank you, Annie. Chris has his hand up, and then Vicky has a question in the chat that I will read. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I think Annie touched on it a little bit. I was thinking about what's the long-term goal of this project? Like what are you doing with this information? How are these properties, registers being promoted? Just a higher level view, I guess, of where this is going.
Patrick, did you want to speak to that bigger picture, and Annie can flesh it out as needed?
Yep. So what this project started from was an inventory of properties the city put together. That was more of a point in time database. And we looked at those properties in the city that were either in the historic parts of the city or maybe outside the city of Brantford, but dated to about the 1920s, 1930s and earlier. So the properties that had that potential for cultural heritage value. And this was looking at narrowing down that list to something a bit more specific to the properties where we had a record of interest, something with the added cultural heritage value to that property and how it contributes to the community. Once we do this project, the next phase is we are going to be looking at contacting all the owners of listed properties and inquiring who might be interested in their property being formally designated under the Heritage Act and have its heritage attributes protected and recognized more explicitly. As far as a review of the Heritage Register, another sort of like point in time review to see if all the properties are still sort of in their form as originally evaluated. We don't have that particular part scheduled yet. We're still working through our first, we're on phase 5 with this of 8. And then the next step will be the canvassing for those who are interested in designation and further being recognized through the Heritage Act. And beyond that, we will look at reviews when appropriate to try and see, what is the state of the properties on the register.
Thank you, Patrick. Anything further, Annie, you wanted to add from your end?
Yeah, I'd like to add that as part of our scope for this project was to provide a user-friendly, accessible database to house the Heritage Register. So the city will be able to use our a database that we put together to make this information publicly accessible and publicly available at some point in time. So all the information and the history that was collected on these properties and on the history of Brantford and all the methodology and the tools that we put together for this project are available to the public. So for anybody who's interested.
That's a great point. Thank you, Annie. I'm going to move to the chat. There's a question from Vicky, and the question is also a really great one. And it is, will we be required to inform future property owners? And I presume this is regarding informing future property owners that the property is listed. Is there an obligation? And Vicky asked me to read this out, but Vicky, please chime in if I've misinterpreted the question at all. And Patrick, maybe if you want to take a run at it, and then if there's anything further Vicky wants to clarify.
I'll admit I can't exactly say, as I'm not a licensed realtor, what the laws and policies that govern their profession say. I think like this is like many things that you should be telling property owners, but it also gives you an opportunity to sell your house up a bit more. This property is recognized for its contribution to the community by virtue of being listed. But you'd have to talk to her, I think to be fair, you'd have to talk to your realtor and see what is a required disclosure. We would always advise you to disclose the information you know about your property, whether that's heritage listing or if it's even, it's the zoning and the zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. And Vicky, if when you're available, let us know if there's any further follow-up on that question. There's another question in the chat from Kaylin, and it's regarding 152 William Street. And Kaylin's wondering if the integrity level that was decided for 152 William Street is available. And there's an additional note indicating that Kaylin is very interested in their home being added to the list. So Annie and Amber Meredith, if you have some specific details about 152 William.
So I can provide you with the criteria that was met, but I don't have the integrity criteria at my fingertips, but it would have had to be, sufficient or exceptional. In terms of the criteria met, this building predates the incorporation of the city of Brantford in 1877, so it's early construction, and it's also a representative example of its architectural style. So that's why this specific property is recommended for inclusion on the Heritage Register as a listed property. But if this is something you really want to know, we can find out and let Patrick know, and then he can follow up with you to provide you with that information.
Great, thank you, Annie. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'll do a sort of last open call to all attendees. If there's any additional questions or if anything needs some further clarification.
I see one, Gayatri.
Yes, so now when we receive the letter, so we have the option of selecting our property to be listed as a heritage property or no? Do we have the option?
So yes, you do have the option. You can reach out to the city, you can reach out to myself, either via email or phone, and provide your position on your property being listed. And we provide that information to council when it makes its decision. Just because of summer vacations, we're consulting a little bit early with our Brantford Heritage Committee. That is next week. So if you provide a written email to me, for example, by end of day tomorrow, we would include that for them. But in order to get your email or letter to our council, which makes a decision, you have much more time. You have until the end of August. I believe August 29th is what we have as the deadline for written comments. And that's the deadline to ensure we can put them in our report. Certainly anything else provided, we send that to council as well, but to formally become part of the report package, there's a deadline. But yeah, you can provide your written position. And if you call in, we'll note that in our staff report.
Okay, I'm still a little unclear about, what exactly heritage property, what are the advantages of listing our property as, apart from what we got as FAQs to read in the mail. So there was one question which mentioned the property tax will not increase if you list it as a heritage property. That was one thing that I got from the mail that we received. Is that true, or did I misunderstand?
So listing a property, designating a property, those do not change the tax class of that property.
So it will not increase or decrease is what you're saying?
Correct. There will be no increase or decrease.
It'll remain the same, or?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That is, the same year to year based on the council budget, and that's a totally different process.
Okay.
I'm not in the tax department. I can't really explain the full process, but you will not have a difference to your taxes because your property has been listed or in potentially designated. That does not affect your taxes.
Okay. So I might have a few more questions. I can definitely email you, but I need to understand. So Annie did mention that they're going to have a database out to the public so that they can access and understand what this entails. So I would like a link for that, or where I can find that information so I can, go through it and come up with questions if I have any.
Right. So yeah, the city we're working on that. We're hoping to have the database available as an interactive map. We're just working through to make sure that program is accessible and that anyone can use it. So that's just something we're working on the technical side at the city, but it is our intent to have a publicly available map with all of these listed properties added, and we'll have an announcement once that is posted.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Any other questions from the attendees before we head into conclusions and maybe just an overview of the key dates upcoming might be helpful. I'm not seeing any hands, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So maybe if we can just do a quick run through on the key next steps and key dates coming out of this meeting, and then we will wrap up our session.
Right, so anyone is able to give me an email. You can use my email address there, pvooser@brantford.ca. For those, if anyone listens in the future, that's spelled P for Patrick, my first initial, V as in Victor, USIR@brantford.ca. You can also call me at 519-759-4150 and extension 5698. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the Heritage Register project, any further information on your property, something we can try and get for you. We'll work with my colleagues here at ASI. And we're making a presentation to the Brantford Heritage Committee on June 27th. The meeting for the Brantford Heritage Committee is held in a hybrid format, so anyone can attend in person or participate via Zoom. You would need to register for that meeting separately from registering for this Public Information Center, but that can be done from the city's website, from the council and committee calendar. So after the consultation with the Heritage Committee, that's a step we have to take under the Heritage Act. We're going to be pausing for the next 2 months to allow people to take their summer vacations. But in between, anyone can contact me and ask questions about the project. We will appear at our Committee of the Whole and on September 26th, or sorry, September 6th, using the council. And that is a combined meeting of our Committee of the Whole Operations and our Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration, because this is a council and municipal election year. So after September 6th, council will formally make a decision on September 20th. Members of the public, property owners, anyone can register to attend those meetings. Both are held in a hybrid format as well. So again, you can appear in person or electronically via Zoom. And if there's any written comments you'd like to provide, you can email me, and anything we receive by August 29th will be included in the staff report. Anything beyond that date, we will still provide to council. It's just a matter of, it may not be possible to put it in the report because an agenda has been published, but we would still provide it to council before council makes their decision.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. And thank you to everyone for attending and all the really excellent questions and the great presentation, providing an overview. And with that, that brings us to the end of our session. And we'll close it out and sign off now. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.